Peace and blessings, and welcome yet again, guys, to yet another episode where today we are going to be having a discussion in the book of Psalms, chapter 3 in the Bible. And we're going to try and understand what was the situation that David was going through for him to get to a point whereby he starts to ask the Lord, Lord, how are they that are increased that rise up against me? And then in the end, he then declares and says that salvation belongs to the Lord. That is what we're going to be talking about in this episode. Now, before we waste further time, let us jump straight in the Bible and understand from verse 1 all the way up until verse 8 and try to understand what is it that David was going through for him to be declaring the thing that he was declaring. Now, verse 1 then says that, Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Verse 2, many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God, Selah. But thou, O Lord, verse 3, art a shield for me, my glory, and the lifter of mine head. Verse 4 then says that, I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. Verse 5, I laid me down great, and I slept. I awakened, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. Verse 7 then says that, arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all my enemies upon the cheekbone, and thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly. Verse 8 then says that salvation belongeth unto the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people. And this is what we find in Psalms chapter 3, where David goes through a phase, and in the beginning he starts to ask the question, oh Lord, how are they that are rising up against me? And this is the same thing that happens in our lives most of the time. When we find ourselves going in the path that God has directed for us to go in, we then start to find out that actually people start to rise up against you, and you start to ask yourself a question, but God, is this supposed to happen? Why is it that people are starting to rise up against me when I am following your path? Why is it that people are starting to betray me when I am following your path? Isn't it supposed to be the other way around? Aren't things supposed to be moving towards my favor? And this is the same thing that David is going through here, and he starts to ask the question, oh Lord, how are they increasing that are rising up against me when I am now following your path? Have you ever found yourself in that situation, asking yourself, Lord, how are they increasing that are rising up against me now that I have decided to follow your path? Then this is the question that we find in verse 1. The key point that I want us to get from there is that David is saying, I am in God, but now many are starting to rise against me. You are in God now, and many are now starting to rise up against you. And you're starting to ask yourself, is this normal? Is this supposed to happen? Why is these things happening to me? And the Bible is saying that this is actually normal. Now that you're in God, many are rising up against you. But does the situation remain in their favor? Does it remain that way? And as we go further, and now we go to verse 2. Verse 2 then says that many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him from the Lord. And verse 2, the points that we wrote here, says that people say these things of God don't work. People look at you and they say, you know what, now that he decided to go with the Lord, look at these things. These things are not moving well. These things are just on a go slow. Things are not moving well. And the Bible is saying that, and David was also going through the same thing. And God is telling you today that these things are supposed to happen, but that is not the end of it. Things are not going to remain that way. And this is the lesson that we are finding from verse 2. That when we get to verse 3, verse 3 is very interesting. David then declares and says, but, before he begins anything else, he says, but thou, O Lord, art a shield for me. Guys, in high school, my English teacher always used to say that everything that you say before the statement but or before the word but is excluded after you have said a statement or you have said the word but. So now we get in verse 1. David is saying that, you know what, many are rising up against me. Many of these things are happening against me. People are just coming up against me. And maybe this is your life situation as well. Many people are rising up against you. Many people are saying that, you know what, these things of God, they don't work. Look at his life. Look at her life. Look at the things that are going on in their lives. You know, these things of God don't work. But when we get to verse 3, now we get a shift in perspective. We get a shift in mindset, because now we realize that in verse 3, David then declares and says that, but thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory and my lifter. You know, this is the wonderful part about being in the Lord, is that you are not your own shield. The Lord is your shield. The Lord is the one that is going to lift you up. The Lord is the one that is going to protect you. And this is the advantages of being in the Lord's side. And this is what we're getting from verse 3, guys. It says that, but, which changes everything, right? And he starts to give his perspective. And if you look at verse 1 and verse 2, he's given the perspective of the enemy. But when you get to verse 3, he starts to give his own perspective and starts to say, you know what? But you, O Lord, are the one that is fighting for me. And then when we get to verse 4, a key point that I want us to note is that when it gets tough, cry unto the Lord. When we get to verse 4, guys, David says, I cried unto the Lord. And this is a point I want you to keep in mind. When the situation gets tough, cry unto the Lord. When you just don't understand what is going on, cry unto the Lord. This is what the Bible is trying to tell you today, that cry unto the Lord. Don't lean onto your own understanding. Don't try and hold back and say, you know what, I'm going to go through this thing alone. I'm going to show these people that I am macho man, I'm superman, and I'm superwoman, and I'm all those kind of things. No, guys, the Bible is saying, cry unto the Lord, for the Lord is your shield. The Lord is the one that is going to lift you up in whatever situation that you are in. Right? This is what we get from verse 4. When the situation gets tough, remember and keep this point in mind, that cry unto the Lord. David does not say that, and I cried to the king of Ahab, or the king of whoever, of whatever prince or whatever kingdom that was there. David does not cry unto those kings, but David cries unto the Lord. And this is the point I want you to keep in mind, that when the situation gets tough, don't cry to the neighbor, don't cry to your cousin, don't cry to anyone. But the first thing that you should do is to cry unto the Lord, and he will be the one that will lift you up. Now, when we get to verse 5, the key point I want us to get that is that he sleeps, even though there are people that are going up against him and that are going up against his life, because God is with him. When you get to verse 5, he says that I laid me down and I slept. This is the advantages of being in God, guys, is that you will sleep in the middle of the storm. When there is storms that are going on against you, God then says that I give you my peace, not as the world gives, but as I am giving you, a peace that surpasses all understanding. In the middle of the storm, you will be able to get sleep because you know that God is with you. Now, we have to go, as we go to verse 6, I want us to note this, guys. Verse 6 then says that I will not be afraid of 10,000 of people that rise up against me. And I just want you to picture this. He does not say I will not be afraid of 10 people. I will not be afraid of 100 people. I will not be afraid of 1,000 people. No, he does not say that. He says that 10,000 people against one man, but he is not afraid. Why? Because the Lord is on his side. And this is the key point I want you to note, that don't be afraid of anything. They might rise up against you. There might be many people that are seeking for your life. But I want you to know that do not be afraid. Whether they be 10,000, whether they be 100,000, do not be afraid, for the Lord is on your side. This is the message that we're getting from David here. He says, 10,000 people shall rise up against me, but I'm not going to be afraid. Why? Because I am with the Lord, and the Lord is with me. Now, when you go to verse 7, as we're about to conclude our message for today, he says that, arise, O Lord, save me. Now, guys, this is a very important aspect to note. He says that, arise, O Lord, and save me. He declares the things that he wants God to do for him in his life. And this is the same thing I want you to note in your life, is that when things are going bad, when whatever things that you want in your life, declare these things unto the Lord. Do not hold them back and think maybe this is too big for God. No, declare the things that you want God to do for you in your life. David does not come to God with a victim mentality. No, he says, arise, O Lord, save me. He's declaring these things, and this is the same thing you should do as well in your life. Whatever things that you want God to do for you in your life, declare these things and say, arise, O Lord, save me from whatever difficulty that you are facing. Save me from this financial problem. Save me from this spiritual problem. Save me from this mentality problem. Save me from this laziness problem. Declare the things that you want God to do for you in your life. Do not hold the victim mentality when you come to God, but declare the things that you want God to do for you in your life. And that is what we get from verse 7, guys. Now, as we go to verse 8 and we conclude our message, David then says that salvation belongs to the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people. As we conclude our message for today, I want you to keep in mind that salvation does not belong to man. Salvation, victory is not in the hands of man, but victory is in the hands of the Lord. Choose you this day which side you want to be upon. Are you going to be on the side of those that are rising up against the people of the Lord? For the Bible has given us a final verdict on these people. The Bible says that the Lord will strike them. So you decide which side you want to find yourself on. But if you're on the side of the Lord, I want you to know that salvation belongs to the Lord. Salvation does not belong to man. Salvation does not belong to your neighbor. Salvation does not belong to anyone of a human capacity, but salvation belongs to the Lord. And that's the message I wanted to bring to you today, guys. That remember, in everything that you do, submit your ways unto the Lord. And even though they come up against you, even though 10,000 people come up against you, remember that you are not there to fight your own battles, but salvation belongs to the Lord. And that's just the end of our message for today. Our message today, guys, and I hope that may the peace of God and the sweet fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you now and forevermore. Now, until we meet again on the next episode, it's been a pleasure. Ciao.